It's the 1st of May 2023, and this is us saying Happy Workers' Day to every Nigerian worker out there. My name is Janice Kobum, and I'm super delighted to be here again, of course, and to welcome you to another edition of Rise and Shine. Thank you so much for being a part of our show.
Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. It's a beautiful day to be alive, a good day to rise and shine. Of course, it's already the first day in another month, so you can see 2023 is still journeying ahead. My name is Uyai Anieka, and thanks for joining us this morning. Of course, I'd like to remind you to be a part of the growing community and grow the engagements that we have on our social media platforms, on the conversations that will raise and rise and shine, and on other programs. So do well to follow us across all social media platforms, all of which you can find at spectrumtv.ng. In the course of Rise and Shine, our phone lines will be displayed on the screen. Do well to call in, send new contributions via text or WhatsApp messages, and we will be glad to take your contributions.
Weekend.
Well, we are thankful. Well, uneventful. Okay, it was nice. I just remember going to church on Sunday, and I was deliberate that I wanted to meet new people.
Okay.
So I just stood, out there, where they create for taking pictures, and just stood and was doing, oh, hello, good morning, I'd like to take pictures with you.
Oh, really?
So yeah, in the process, I think I got around to meeting about 10 new persons.
Okay.
For that I can, communicate by name, and then the rest I'll be able to say a proper hello when I see them. Okay. So it made me feel really good. Yeah. Working afar from town, sometimes you really don't get to meet people, and your network is kind of shrinking also. So I really enjoyed the fact that, okay, this was good. Yeah. So I think that was like the highlight of my weekend.
Okay. Yeah. Meeting new people, making new friends, and of course expanding your connect as
exactly.
Well. Really beautiful it is. I think on my own end, I decided I was going to shut down totally, like really shut down totally, and just sleep through my weekend.
No gadgets.
No, not at all. At some point I did movies, but I know very well that I was deliberate in sleeping. I was very intentional about it. So I just pulled down the curtains, locked my door, and awake till late in the midnight trying to do one or two things or the other. True. You find out that your sleep time has really reduced drastically. And then in the morning you're like, your alarm goes up, and then you're like, oh, it's time for work again. So I'm like, okay, so this weekend, I'm not going to go to town. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to shop, nothing. Let me just lock myself in. At some point, a friend of mine asked, are you sure you're okay? When I say that, oh, I just woke up. Are you sure you're okay? I'm like, I'm very okay. I'm fine and all of that. But it was quite refreshing for me. It was really refreshing. Like all of the sleep hours I lost during the week, I just had to recoup during the weekend.
Yeah.
So
that's actually something I don't joke with on the weekends, but I actually didn't sleep this weekend. Okay. I don't know how that happened, but I didn't sleep. But when it comes to doing that for myself the weekends, I don't actually joke. I just sleep.
Yeah, you need it.
It's necessary, and I'm glad you're able to get it.
Your strength, you lost sleep hours and everything. So what's the essence of even having a weekend when you know that during the weekdays you're up and about, until late in the night and all of that? It reduces your sleep time, and of course, medically we hear that it's 8 hours.
Yeah, about 8
hours
to 9 hours. Yeah,
for someone to sleep properly and be healthy. So meanwhile, these days we sleep about five hours or so.
Some days is even less. But it's also good, like those that are observing the public holidays today on the premise of Workers' Day. Some people can still get a chance to sleep in. Like this morning, the rain started at about 3:30 a.m. At that time, I was already up preparing to be at work, and I'm like, this is the one where I should just push my leg, tuck myself back in and sleep. It was so hard to stand up, but the work has to be done. So at this point, some people that still have a holiday today can, still get to rest, relax, and get back to work more refreshed. And I believe that is part of the reasons why we have like observance of the workers' day. Yeah, so people can even rest, reevaluate how your working ethics, your work ethics are, your working conditions, and then just go back to work fresh. I think it's just part of all of that mix.
Yeah, definitely.
So rest is a big factor.
Big factor. Not to also forget that it's the 1st of May, which is feel the shock and the fear in your eyes right now. This is the 5th month, and you know that once we get to like May, it begins to run. It begins to run very fast. Before you know what's happening, we are hitting the ember months and all of that. But I know that in life, people need to plan. Make goals, create those atmospheres that you can able to smash your goals, and for goals that readily, right, that you cannot smash maybe because of one circumstance or the other. It doesn't really whatever circumstances or whatever reason there was for you not to smash those goals. But again, let's also be able to celebrate the little wins that we achieve every day of our lives. It's very, very necessary. It's more like a fuel, that gets to boost our morale to keep going on, to keep forging ahead, to keep conquering, to keep winning, and be more of what we want ourselves to be, and all of that. But it's a good thing. Once again, happy new month to all Nigerians watching Rise and Shine this morning, and from wherever it is you are watching the show from the surface of this earth, we say happy new month to you. Welcome to the month of May. And so we are going to be starting with the federal government. Of course, I have flashed right now. The stadium in Abuja is ready for workers to actually use to commemorate their day. But then again, the federal government, of course, declared today, May 1, as a public holiday to mark this year's Workers' Day celebration. Now, the Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, made a declaration on behalf of the federal government. Aregbesola, in a statement signed by the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Interior, Shuaibu Belgore, obviously over the weekend, commended workers for their hard work, diligence, and sacrifice, noting that their efforts are largely responsible for the greatness of the country and the respect Nigeria now commands in the Committee of Nations. He went ahead to say that there is dignity in labor. We have to have a dedication and commitment to work we do, because it is vital to nation building. Now, we'll just pause it at that point now. Workers' Day celebration, of course, we're celebrating all workers today. We've heard the Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, through his spokesperson, say that the workers in Nigeria are more like the backbone of the country, and of course there's dignity in labor. I, for one, I stand for dignity in labor and all of that, but so many questions to be asked concerning workers in Nigeria, the challenges they are facing, and to everything. Has the government actually created that environment where workers can beat their hands on their chest and say, yes, we are proud to be workers in this country. We have the right remunerations. We have the right environment.
Is how much of our workforce is in tandem with global best practices. If you bring our Nigerian workers across different parastatals, agencies, and all that, if they were to, put on a competitive platform with other workers of their kind in other from other climes, will they compete favorably? Will they still be able to the result of what they do, will it be acceptable, globally? So these are some of the things I'm thinking about when you're talking about training, in their areas of expertise to make their work globally acceptable. Is that readily available? Apart from the fact that, yes, we go to work Mondays to Fridays, 8 to 5 o'clock, sign our timesheets, get our salaries at the end of the month. I think one of the fears when you're talking about like working, especially for the federal government, there's usually a fear of redundancy, that people are not necessarily growing or making progress in their fields of career. Because for instance, there's always a joke made about people working in states and federal sector secretariat. It's just more like you go there, sit down, look for one small thing to sell. There's not necessarily anything that is tasking you in your field of endeavor, right? It's a booster. Sometimes you would hear people tell you, don't go waste your life away in the civil service. Yes, because it's more like it's not tasking. If you want to have now
a
this
very robust kind of career,
do that
do
in
it
the private sector, you know, but that might not be holistically true, but to a very large extent that happens. People are not necessarily growing. If you bring someone who works quote unquote in the civil service with someone who is doing that same job in the private sector, you find out that their knowledge base and even what would I call it, how they execute the job is going to be different.
Effectiveness,
yes,
diligence,
productivity. Just like Rauf Aregbesola was saying in his statement, productivity is the end goal for every work done. So when you calculate productivity of the Nigerian workforce, would you say that we are doing well? I think that's a big question.
I think before we even wrap up this conversation very quickly now, the fact that a lot of people want federal and state jobs is tied to job security.
Exactly.
That's the first thing, you know, because when we even look at, yes, how viable the private sector is, how encompassing it will make you, you know, become and also match you with global best practices. We also have situations where, oh, you can be kicked either state or federal government. So everybody's rushing to become a civil servant because they actually want that job security. And at the end of the day, more importantly for them is the fact that, yes, there's the gratuity thing and the pension and all of that. So it doesn't happen mostly in private sectors. So I think that's basically why a lot of people still want to get a federal job, mostly federal job, because it pays better than even the state jobs and all of that. But again, I think that wherever you find yourself, whether state, federal, private sector, I think that we should just put our bets, because what justification will you have for even receiving the salary? You know, it's just do it in such a way that you can beat your chest and say, yes, I worked for this.
But at the end of the day, also, when we are talking about, like, you know, developing yourself in the course of your work, you also find out that sometimes, apart from looking at the need for our organizations and establishments to make those investments, sometimes as individual, for your own sake, for your own growth in your career path, you can make those investments for yourself. Because sometimes people retire early and still want to work in other sectors. So if I wanted to get into the private sector upon retirement, do I have the qualifications and the trainings that will make that possible? Now you can make those investments into yourself while you're working. And I think another beautiful thing for working with the government is the fact that they actually have a lot of platforms that they can receive things to push their lives forward. So we are talking loans, we are talking grants, we are talking even education do not cover you for. So we are even looking at, if you are a person who is a forward-thinking person and you want to move yourself forward on your own, you will find those platforms and benefits within the federal government and state government niche of service and actually go forward as a person.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that there are some people that would do their best, you know, even in the civil service, to that particular conversation. And move to our next flash news this morning very quickly now. Of course, we see that the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, says no plans to phase out the redesigned Naira notes from circulation. Now, the CBN's acting director, Corporate Communications Department, Isa Abdul Munmin, made this known in a statement in Abuja on Sunday, which was yesterday. Now, the statement was a reaction to a piece of viral news on social media that the Apex Bank was contemplating the withdrawal of the recently redesigned 1,500 and 200 Naira currency banknotes from circulation. According to them, we wish to emphatically state that such speculation is unfounded and a ploy by some interests to cause panic among members of the public. The new and old currency notes have been circulating side by side. Oh yeah, you remember that we had conversations along this line, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, where I was saying that, look, even the new Naira notes now, you can hardly find it. I think recently I went out to town and for the first time after the whole cash crunch thingy, before they even said, okay, so banks can now recirculate old Naira notes. For the first time, I was laying my hands on the new 500 and I think, okay, I have used it. I have used it. I didn't keep it. You know, some people are saying that if you get the new naira, if you have a hold of the new naira now, better just go and drop it somewhere because it's cursed. We can't find it anymore.
But what's really the use of keeping it and storing it? It's not going to multiply as you
No,
do.
it's not going to multiply, but the fear is
when they
December
withdraw.
31, when the old naira notes are phased off, what happens?
But that should not be the burden of the citizens, because the central bank is absolutely doing something wrong here. If you're coming to tell us that we should not be afraid, that there is no plan to phase out the redesigned naira, at this point we should have seen more influx of the redesigned naira in, you know, in circulation, other than the fact that we are basically using the old naira notes as of now. Now, saying that, you know, the deadline for when the old naira was to be used was extended should have given the CBN ample time to make sure that if it was a problem of, oh, the production was low, more of the new naira should have been, you know, produced at this point, or whatever is the, you know, back end of what they do. But Nigerians should have at this time began to see more of the new naira in circulation and in their systems. Again, a gradual withdrawal without making announcements, without putting deadlines, just pump more new naira into the system. Every time we transact and bring the old naira back to the bank, we find out that it's gradually getting back because more new naira is, you know, is in circulation. The CBN is not doing what they ought to do. Now, we are in a country where we are battled with who gives the latest press statement. Get the work that you're supposed to be doing done. The new naira is not available. We are not seeing it. I mean, this has been maybe about 2 months since we started using the old naira. I haven't gone to any bank platform where I have been given a new naira.
And even our ATM machines are dispensing old notes.
Dispensing old notes.
So we are also going to be facing the kind of crunch that
Same
we faced.
issue again.
Same issue again.
And like we said, the months are already running. This is already the 5th month. Before you know it, December is here, and Nigerians will begin to face the same problem again. I think, you know, we should have more proactiveness on the end of the CBN. And this is not even when, okay, most of the National Assembly, now we are in transition, so that is also going to affect a lot of things. But the National Assembly also, at this point, should be on the neck of the CBN to make sure that when we get to December, we do not have a repetition of the things that Nigerians went through. We are already grappling with, oh, will subsidy be removed? Will it not be removed? Too many things for Nigerians to grapple with at the same time. Just redesign the naira, put it back into the system, and then it's a better answer to the speculations. Nigerians are speculating because of what they see on ground.
Yeah, definitely. We'll take a tweet now from a particular citizen in this country, and then we'll talk about that very quickly. Let's have that tweet. Of course, this saying that...
Of course, this is George Onyedikachuku is saying the systems are so corrupt and insensitive that no one often asks, why are we even a country? What makes us a nation? It's been how many months since the introduction of the new naira notes, and till date, it's nowhere to be found, even after all the suffering that Nigerians went through. Now, normally, someone should have been held accountable for the hell Nigerians went through as a result of unnecessary media. And ask this question, you're going to get a press statement as a response. You know, like I said earlier, the National Assembly should be sitting on this.
Yeah.
We need to find a way that we have accountability.
Maybe the central bank will come up with the talks that monies have been pumped in, monies are in circulation, but some group of people are just trying to hoard the new naira notes or cutting away with the new naira notes and all of that.
But even if they were going to do that, to what degree? You're talking about the fact that it looks like the new naira notes have been entirely mopped up from the system.
That's what it looks like.
Yes, that's what it looks like currently. So it makes sense to even make those kinds of speculations. So it's easier to tell back to the fact that it's possible the CBN did not, you know, produce enough of the new naira notes. Maybe. Now, Janice, you remember when we had the cash crunch in the highest peak?
Yeah.
One of the conversations that the CBN governor continued telling us was that, oh no, we designed enough new naira notes and we pumped them into the system. Where was the money till that particular, you know, phase of cash crunch was? We didn't see it. So who is lying to Nigerians or who is speaking the truth? So that cannot even be their line of conversation.
Anyway, just like George Onyedikachuku has said, normally someone should be in prison right now or held responsible for all of the sufferings that Nigerians went through during the cash crunch. And we just hope that the CBN will try as much as possible to inject more new Naira notes into circulation so we do not have to face what we faced before. Many questions will still be asked concerning even the authenticity and the legality that backed the new Naira policy in the country. But yeah, let's look at our major stories for the morning.
Yeah, major stories for this morning. Okay, of course, we also have, as the matter of flash news, Sudan evacuations are continuing. The Nigeria Air Force plane and airpiece and other thing had been released, to go get the Nigerians that are stranded. That is still in the works. We haven't heard that they have landed yet. But then, major stories for this morning, big things still happening in the country. Public the public has been invited to the brought. He was installed on the throne after his mother, Queen Elizabeth, passed. So, of course, celebrations are about to come, and members of the public have been invited to watch the coronation of King Charles. Shouts of allegiance to the monarch in a chorus of millions of voices to be shown as the homage of the people. Now, people around the UK and abroad will be invited to say the words, "I swear that I will pay true allegiance to your majesty and to your heirs and successors according to law. So help me God," in a declaration that replaces the traditional homage of peers. Now, Saturday's service also involved for the first time the active participation of representatives of faiths other than Christianity. Rishi Sunak, a Hindu, gave a reading from the Bible in his capacity as Prime Minister, despite Church of England's law in effect barring other faiths rather from taking an active role in its services. Now, there is no issue about Shunak's personal faith. They are delighted that he is doing, that, of course, that he read the Bible in his capacity, said Lambeth Palace, written prayer, a hymn sung in English, Welsh, Scottish, Gaelic, and Irish in an acknowledgement of the rich heritage of the UK and the participation of female Anglican bishops. Now, the coronation liturgy published over the weekend saw the drawing up by Lambeth Palace, the London headquarters of the Archbishop of Canterbury, in close consultation with the King. Now, new elements reflect the diversity of the UK contemporary society. This was said by Justin Welby. Now, a lot of new things, that we saw right there in the coronation of King Charles. And it's beautiful to see that the UK government and the monarchical system gave room to impute the fact that society is growing, society is evolving, people are growing, people are evolving. So it's not that, 100 years ago with the monarchical system, this is what we did, this is how we used to do it. So they gave room to a lot of things, and even the Anglican community in the UK had to give room for Rishi Sunak to be able to read the Bible in his own capacity as a Hindu. So it just finds that inclusivity is something that the new dispensation of rulership by the king is going to be seen and experienced. And I think that that is good for the UK, and the fact that there are, some form of really strong world power at this time. It's good to see that with what they represent, inclusivity is part of how they're going forward as a kingdom.
Yeah, definitely. We're looking forward to the 6th of May when King Charles III will be properly coronated by the ethics of the British monarchical system. But again, looking at all of the new things that have been injected, to make this particular coronation a little bit different. I know that social media, was not really particularly, there was some kind of drag for against King Charles III. I think that allegiance, people, millions of people coming to pay allegiance, like you rightly put in context now, that before now, millions of people should come and say, I do it now, I pledge to, or I pay allegiance to,
the king.
to the king and all of that. Now, a lot of people are not taking that lightly. Some people on social media have also said that, look, we're not paying allegiance to anybody. And then another angle of this particular coronation seems to be the cost, of which is being, which is going to be plunged into the coronation and used as executing the coronation. I think it runs into about 250 million pounds. Now, they've also tried to break it down, saying that a massive security operations, of course, is one of the things, one of the areas that will eat the chunk of this particular money that has been earmarked for the coronation. And then another chunk will also be needed to deploy, of course, thousands of police officers and protection squad. Then another will be used for, the whole celebration, pomp and pageantry, and all the, celebrations for the 3 days. But then again, there's also the saying that these monies will be particularly gotten from taxpayers. I think that's where the whole issue is right now. Some Britons have said that, look, King Charles III has the money that he can actually use in doing his coronation. Why are we taking it out of, taxpayers' monies?
That's a strong conversation.
That's very strong conversation.
That's a very strong conversation, because if you're looking at the family of the king himself, they have what it takes to be able to execute this coronation and event without necessarily breaking the bank over taxpayers' money. Now, if you say you want to take a certain percentage from taxpayers' monies to even add up to what you have, that would be a different conversation. But when it looks like bulk of the money will be coming from taxpayers' money, let's not forget that in the UK, over the past few months, we've seen some workers strike over the fact that they want their, remunerations to be improved upon. Health workers were striking, and all the other,
there's been even rising cost of
living. That's been a constant in the UK, like over the past 2 years, if not more. So these are things that taxpayers' monies could be used to solve and interpret rightly and help the people. But yet you're hearing that these monies are quoted to, coronate a king into his throne. So far so good. It's already taken them 100 million pounds in the things they have done so far. We are saying the process of the coronation has not been completed, so it will take, up to that 250 that you're talking about, if not more. Sometimes, now when we were reading this, it just gave me like, okay, this is where Nigeria got this wrong. Because, I mean, these were the people who colonized us. If they have this kind of attitude in spending, it's just, see, who your father is very important. And I just did a quick Nigerian thinking at this moment. This must have been where Nigerians got this whole quoting of 100 and how many million now have we used quotations for events in government quarters. And most Britons are saying that this is absolutely unacceptable. And some of their rebuttals are in really strong languages, against how much they want to spend for the coronation of the king. But the coronation is something that must happen. And when we are talking about royalty, well, royalty is expensive. But to what extent does that expense need to be done on the neck of the people? I think that's what most of the Britons are really, really worried about. So back and forth, we are having a lot of, check and balances with history. How was it done, when your mother was the person on the throne, in all of the years that had preceded you coming on the throne, they're just trying to check and balance a lot of things. But we do hope that they would do what is in the best interest of the people of UK.
Definitely. I think at this point, we just take very quickly some stories coming up from Sudan right now, part of our major stories for this morning. Of course, we see that the Nigerian Air Force have also sent their jets to Sudan and to Egypt also to help cut away and evacuate Nigerian citizens. But the issue still becomes very messy. It's quite messy as we speak. As at Friday, we were expecting some evacuees, from Sudan to land in the country, and that did not happen. It's quite pathetic that we see that even the Egyptian government and Ethiopia as well are asking for visas. And I remember watching a particular story where a particular Yakubu was saying that, look, that the AU, the Egypt and Ethiopian countries now, government are breaking AU protocols by demanding visas from Africans fleeing from Sudan. And it's quite worrisome that all of these messy issues are coming up at this point in time. Aside from Air Peace now, the Nigerian Air Force, have also sent their jets to help evacuate Nigerians from war-torn Sudan and all of that. I think ceasefire ended on Sunday, which was yesterday, and right now we hear that gunshots and strikes have started again in Sudan. It's quite a worrisome issue, and we're wondering where do we go with all of this. And to my amazement, I also saw that there was a news I saw that some state governments are beginning to go pick up their nationals, their own, maybe for people that they have sent there on scholarship or something. I think that the government of Kaduna has taken their people, their what do I call it now, their natives, from that from war-torn Sudan. So why is it, if we have a situation where different state governments are going to take up their own people, why is it a difficult task for Nigerian government to actually evacuate the 5,500 Nigerians in Sudan that are willing to come back home? Why is it a difficult problem? Now we see that the Nigerian Air Force have gone to Sudan with food and relief materials to help these people. What are we saying? Remember also there's a messy situation about the whole monies that was spent, in trying to buy buses or to hire buses and all of that.
Buses. No, it's a lot of problem, and there's also accusations that the federal government is engaging in a fake evacuation of Nigerian students, because it's unreasonable to think of the fact that most other countries have finished their evacuation. Some countries are even saying we are done with, and brought back to home soil as we speak. There are no updates on that particular journey whatsoever. Initially, as of Thursday, Friday, there was information of the movement that had started out of Khartoum, and then the people were held up in a desert in Egypt and all of that. Now we had Dabire Wera come out to say, oh, that particular issue was resolved and the journey has started, but we have not heard where they have landed, So it's a major problem. The accusation of the federal government engaging in a fake evacuation would be something. And how come we have voted a lot of money for this evacuation, but we have not been able to get it done? Let's not even forget that a corridor was also opened in the UAE. The UAE government granted some airlifting for certain Nigerian students and all of that. How come other people are able to even help our citizens, but we've not been able to execute, an evacuation?
But it was very fast for the federal government to come up with a $1.2 million
US dollars,
for evacuation purpose. But as it is now, we'll take a snippet from the Permanent Secretary, Humanitarian Ministry and Chair Situation Room on evacuation of Nigerians from Sudan. Now let's hear what they have to say. Nasri Sani Gwazo giving insight on the funding for the buses and evacuating Nigerians out of Sudan.
It takes to hire a bus only for one item for the buses. Do you know how much it takes to hire a bus from Khartoum to the border? $30,000 per bus. $30,000 per bus times 40 buses. Can somebody, any good mathematician amongst you? That is not billion. Million. Yes. That is where your 1.2 million comes into. $1,000 and transfer it. If you take out $400,000, what does it come to?
800,000.
No, 1/3.
Yes.
Of the total. Once they gave us 13 buses, 13 buses times $30,000 is how much? 390. 30. Can somebody calculate for me?
That's 390 is correct.
390. They stopped giving us. You remember I told you they gave us 13,000. They're supposed to give us 13 point something buses. They kept the 10,000. When you are traveling in Sudan, you don't enter a bus and start going. You must load it with water and biscuits. Yes. Believe me, I just became an expert on Sudan overnight. We now transferred the balance, started transferring the balance in tranches. And believe me, you don't transfer money to Sudan directly. You have to get somebody who knows the company who will transfer and give cash. Then you go into agreement. We signed an MOU. I have those signed MOUs with us. And at every stage, I report this to DSS and NFIU so that they can monitor the movement of the money. And so that, do you know that in Nigeria, if you transfer money from government account, it does not click because it has a dashboard that can be seen. They will stop it. So we had to alert them. And we send this money, and it got delayed. It's only for one item.
Serious concerns right there. You know, it looks like the explanation has been given to Nigerians, take it or leave it. But a big question that is raised, the amount of money that was quoted for the hiring of buses, that same amount of money, like we had the aviation guy tell us the other day when we talked about the trucks, could have even bought us those buses and more. How come we are hiring at that amount? And then the spokesperson is feel it's, you know how the people that are
penny wise, pound foolish.
That's just the English way to put it. Because you're wondering, the people that are the minders of our system, do they forget that Nigerians are not backward people? Because it just looks like you are dealing with illiterates in the country, so they cannot interpret how much, a bus should cost for evacuation, or it doesn't just make sense. The food that Nigerians are going to eat, did you buy it from the United States of America, or is food that is staple food in our country that you're going to give to our people? It's just an unintelligent way of spending Nigerian money.
And then you don't you think it's also waste? You pack a bus full of food and you don't give them fuel. So if the food gets bad on the road. Anyways, we'll just take a breather right now. That's just the much we can take on our major stories and of course our flash news this morning. We'll take a breather and then join Mary Joseph for the news brief. And when we come back, of course, more conversations on Rise and Shine this morning. Don't forget, it's Workers' Day, and we're also going to be looking at the front pages of our national dailies this morning and see what the national dailies have for us. To stay tuned and don't move a muscle. We'll be right back.
this is your morning news brief on Spectrum TV, live from Uyo. I am Francis 88. We begin the news brief with the report that the presidency has released its 90-page fact sheet chronicling the high point of the President Muhammadu Buhari-led government as it winds down on May 29th. According to a statement signed by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, the fact sheet highlighted the 37 bills signed into law, 12 executive orders, several infrastructure projects, bilateral agreements, fiscal reforms, as well as the appointment election of eminent Nigerians into the leadership of several global organizations. The fact sheet further highlighted other infrastructural gains in terms of power, roads, healthcare, housing, oil and gas, and digital economy. Away from that, the Nigerian Union of Teachers of Kwara State have called off the strike action following the state's government intervention. The Nigerian Union of Teachers in New York, Kwara State, called off the strike as the state government intervened over the non-payment of entitlement of the teachers, and this followed the intervention by the state governor Udomi Manuel on the industrial dispute between the teachers and the state government. Briefing Government House correspondent at the end of the meeting of leaders of the Nigerian Union of Teachers (NUT) and the Nigerian Labour Congress with the governor at Government House Uyo, the chairman of the NUT, Comrade Edith Emenyi, said the issues that led to the strike have been amicably resolved. Away from that, the Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) has dismissed reports that it is considering the withdrawal of the redesigned 200 naira, 500 naira, and 1000 naira notes from circulation. The Apex Bank's acting director of corporate communications, Issa Abdul Mumimat, in a statement described the reports as unfounded speculations, noting that there is no plan. More than 200 Irish citizens and their dependents have been evacuated from Sudan as the rescue mission draws to a close. Recall that the Emergency Civil Assistance Team, ECAT, involving Irish Defence Forces personnel, was deployed on 27th of April 2023. According to the Irish Department of Foreign Affairs, 209 people have been evacuated from Sudan, adding that the majority of Irish citizens taken from the country in recent days have been carried on UK flights at Anfield after Tottenham looked on course to salvage a point despite going 3 goals behind inside 15 minutes. Spurs were 5-0 down after 20 minutes at Newcastle United and swiftly found themselves 3 goals adrift at Anfield as Liverpool delivered an opening salvo that left them chasing what looked like a lost cause. We'll have details of the stories and more in the news at 12. I am Francis Edit. Good morning and have a wonderful new month. I'll hand you over to Janice and Uyai for the rest of Rise and Shine. So stay with us.
Welcome back. It's the Rise and Shine Daily, and of course, we just came off the news brief desk where we had Francis said that. Mary has always been taking the news brief, so it's always a difficult thing, trying to switch, transiting from Mary to another person. But of course, we had Francis Edwards take the news brief and give us update of some of the things happening around the country and, of course, around the globe as well. But just to bring you up to speed with some of the things we have had as conversations, major conversations and flash news this morning. Of course, we looked at the fact that today is Workers' Day celebration, and the federal government has declared today public holiday to celebrate all workers. And of course, the redesigned Naira notes seems to also be a major issue as we speak. We saw that the CBN is saying or giving a disclaimer that there is no plans to phase out the new redesigned Naira notes. But then again, Nigerians are asking, why don't we have more of it in circulation? And of course, we looked at our major stories, the evacuation from Sudan. Of course, for Nigerian students and other nationals in Sudan, seems to be a major problem up until this moment. How much the government said they had earmarked for the evacuation process. And then again, we looked at the fact that King Charles III will be having his coronation ceremony on the 6th of May. And the amount that has been earmarked for that particular coronation is sending chills down the spine of a lot of Britons who have said, look, it's not really necessary for us to use taxpayers' monies, summing up to about £250 to do a coronation when the king himself is king with or without that particular activity or event. And we failed to mention the fact that, of course, Dr. Tiwa Savage, one of the major musical artists in Nigeria, will be performing at that event as well. It's said that she's only the African going to be performing for King Charles' coronation. And yes, that's just all the stories that we had, as a wrap up to flash news and our major stories this morning. But at this point, we'll take a daily spotlight where we get to share details, or rather, stories on the front page of a national daily. So it's Spotlight Dailies up next.
Spotlight dailies, the stories on the front pages of our national dailies. Let's take the Punch newspaper first this morning, looking at the stories there. 8-year scorecard. Workers lament hardship. Score Buhari, governors low on welfare. High cost of living has made nonsense of minimum wage. 40% pay rise and 40% pay rise, says the unions. Pensioners still earning 500 naira, 750 naira monthly. Economy harsh under Buhari, says retirees. Okay, we also see here unsold goods stock rises by 52%, says manufacturers. Page 11. Don't attack embassy staff. Ambassador warns stranded Nigerian students. Page 7. Pitiable condition with this particular story. Federal government dumps 5% telecom tax waiver. Page 39. We also see here opposition's sack. Page 4. CBN supplies more new Naira notes to banks. Page 32 is where you can find the story. I'm very sure all of us will want to read that and find out where they have, supplied these new Naira notes to. That's all the stories that we have on the front page of the Punch.
Okay, we go now to our next paper for the morning, and that is the Nation newspaper. Of course, the bigger part of the Nation this morning carries just one story, which is the major story there. It says the remains is fire back. And we have that APC legal advisor recommends Lukman's expulsion. You can get details of that story on page 5 Workers are engine room of growth, says Lawan. You can get that story on page 5 as well of the Nation newspaper. 3 abroad students for UK exchange program. And we also have Rivers first to host Tinubu, says VK. Rivers first to host Tinubu, says VK. Excited VK, I must say. Ohane is a leader. Iwanyanwu asked Buhari to free Kano before May 29. The story of the IPOP leader seems to be a major story here, and sometimes we wonder what exactly is happening, for the release of Nnamdi Kanu. Going forward, Sudan evacuation, 637 Nigerians stranded at border. And the writer says Egypt declares clearance. Federal government moves Port Sudan routes. And that's all the stories that we have this morning on the front page of The Nation.
Going forward, we take this day newspaper, and the big story there says NLC CSOs plead with judiciary to save Nigeria's democracy. Say INEC has driven a nail into the electoral coffin of the country. Arise News Channel donates 1 billion naira to Western Delta University to set up Media and Technology School. FireMe offers School of Policy Implementation to institution. Peter Obi ex-Ekiti governor to become visiting lecturers. Oh wow. We also see here failure to recover AMCON's 4 trillion naira debt will hurt economy. Kuru warns. Page 5 is where you can find that particular story. Okay, there is a story here that says Atiku won 2023 presidential poll. PDP replies Lai Mohammed. Okay, Sudan, Nigerians trapped between Sudan, Egypt, send SOS. Pitiable condition here. We also see here TUC kicks against planned privatization of TCN, NIPOS, Federal Medical Centers. Page 45 is where you can find that particular story. Of course, there's a pictorial image there showing Western Delta University 15th Founders Day celebration. And that's all the stories that we have on the front page of this day newspaper.
Okay, let's move now to the very next paper, and that's the Daily Sun. Let's find out what the Daily Sun has to say this morning. The big story says fireworks over presidential polls. You lost woefully. Federal government tells Labour Party and PDP. The writer says you've murdered sleep. Labour Party tells APC. History will George Buhari, says PDP. And you can get details of that story on page 6. 8, I beg your pardon, is where you get that story from. Labour rejects planned privatization of NIPOS, TCN, and FMCs. Page 25 is where you get details. Adamawa Guba, why I declared Binani winner. Yunusa Ari, stage wreck. Page 6 is where you can get that story from. Quite interesting story this is. Federal government accuses El Rufai of placing Unity School students live in harm's way. You can find details of that story on page 27. Lagos explains demolition of buildings in Ajao Estate. And anxiety in Kano over planned review of Sanusi's deposition, I beg your pardon. Okay. This story is quite interesting. If we take our minds back to how Sanusi, was dethroned from his being the emir, it's quite an interesting story. We just have to look at that as well. Ohaneze ratifies Iwanyanwu as President General. Page 27 is where you get that, and the writer says, "I will defend Ndibu." Okay, and that's all the stories that we have there. Okay. On the front page of Daily Sun.
Let's take our very last paper this morning. That will be the Vanguard newspaper. And the big story there talks Major City Maritime. Other sectors grieve over continuous misery, poverty, hopelessness. Ask governments to address poverty, insecurity, unemployment, inflation, high cost of living, set agenda for incoming government. A lot of expectations right there. OPS urges federal government, I beg your pardon, to suspend proposed new taxes. Sudan, 637 Nigerians arrive Egyptian border. Envoy assures parents of students. Okay. We also have here inflation. High interest rates drive stock market loss to 1.01 trillion naira in April. Market loses over 70%. Apologizes over failure to meet deadline. Southeast governors, Igbo leaders inaugurate Iwanyanwu as new Ohaneze President General. Okay. Buildings marked for 17 buildings marked for demolition in Anambra for harboring gunmen. Serious stories, page 11. No plans to phase out redesigned Naira notes, CBN says. Of course, in the sports story, we can see under 17 AFCON. Ubade's Eaglets begin on a winning note. Good story there for the Eaglets. And that's all the stories that we have on the Vanguard.
Our last paper for this morning is the Nigerian Tribune. The big story says APC set for stormy NWC meeting as leadership tussle gets messier. We also have as rider, National Legal Advisor Council's party chair to expel Lukman. South-South Zonal APC removes Gaidom Udosen. Okay. Exercise a military. Okay. Exercise in nullity. APC National Publicity Secretary. We also have that Buhari's government worst in Nigeria's history. NIPOS, TCN, and FMCs. NDLEA seizes draw consignment hidden inside imported car, food items at Lagos Airport Seaport. Police arrest suspected serial killer, ritualist in Ogun, rejects 1 million naira bribe. That's a good one for the Nigerian police. Abe withdraws petition against Rivers governorship elections. And then we also have 10th National Assembly, opposition lawmakers adamant, vow to reject APC zoning favored candidate for speakership position. Tension mounts at Lagos Airport over 100% increment in cargo handling tariff. And that's all the stories that we have this morning coming from our national dailies. Serious concerns, yeah. Today is because how favorable it has been for them, you know, to give in their 100% in terms of productivity and the likes. And then again, have government actually given them that, you know, environment to explore, to harness what they have, you know, and all of that. But it's quite worrisome where we get to see that even the NLC Buhari got the worst so far.
The experience will be blighting. They even see retirees also say, I mean, when you hear
500,
that the
700.
retirees earning 500 naira, 700 naira, I sometimes it feels like, you know, the people that are leading us don't know what's happening in Nigeria. I mean, what can you really buy in Nigeria with 500 naira? You're talking about the fact that rice 2 cups, that would take you, that rice 2 cups, and then an average family in Nigeria has at least 6 dependents in the house at a time. So when you buy 2 cups of rice at 500 naira, that's your whole salaries, your whole pension worth, you know, for a month. So there's a whole lot of problem. And now they are saying that their worst experience so far has been under the Buhari-led administration. They, 1st of May, set aside to celebrate workers, you know, nationally, the world over. You'd just take time and x-ray how the government has been with its workers. And on the front pages of our papers, we also even see where they're saying even the 40% pay rise, it's not commensurate to the realities that we have on ground. Because, for instance, when you say that someone's salary has been increased by 40%, you have to first of all find out what they're earning before you celebrate the 40% increase. So if someone was earning 10,000 naira, when there's a 40% increase, how much does that person now earn? In the face of the reality of things in Nigeria, how has that 40% increase helped their lives? So it's just, we are just unrealistic in something. And you know, like we always say, sometimes the federal government, especially like in this last days of the Buhari-led administration, they are quick to do certain things. I don't know whether it's in search of final moment accolades, but as it comes, Mayday has revealed otherwise in terms of workers, you know, the way they feel about their welfare under the Buhari-led administration.
Yeah. quite worrisome and also interesting, I may say. But I would like to hear Nigerians talk, actually. Of course, do well to call us. Our phone lines have been opened. Let us get your contributions. Quite interesting stories on the front pages of our dailies this morning. Workers
several
saying,
stories.
yes, several stories. Workers saying, look, it has been a very tiring and devastating situation for Nigerian workers in the past 8 years of the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, aside from that, which we would like Nigerians to also share their opinion on, the PDP is saying, look, we won the elections. Let's not also forget that Labour Party is at one corner saying that our mandate was stolen.
Yes.
But the government is saying you lost woefully. You lost woefully. And there's also a part that says that the government is not saying, I think I would like to put it the way it was, government is not saying any of the rigging situations, you know, opposition's rigging claim fraudulent. The federal government is insisting.
And I have a problem with the way the federal government is representing itself in the mix of all of these election tribunal and questions of the credibility. Because with that headline, it's more like, I don't know how to explain it. The federal government is unnecessarily backing,
being involved.
Yes, unnecessarily backing the win of the APC candidates. I don't know, when you read certain things and interpret between the lines, it's really risky, because, you know, I think some of the sub themes were saying you shouldn't, the response from either Labour Party or PDP was saying, do not preempt the judgment of the court. I mean, you ask the people that are aggrieved in the process to head to the court, why are you in your statements and body language preempting, you know, what the judgment of the court is going to be? And with all the language of the federal government now saying, oh, opposition failed woefully because they did not take their time with their homework, you know, APC took their time with their homework, and it's just the way they are proceeding with this, but there's too much involvement.
There's too much like bias.
Yes.
When the federal government is supposed to be on bias. Knowing fully well that whoever becomes the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is first of all president to all Nigerians before the person even, I think that's when once you become even a president, you know, that party line should not even come up to say that, oh, we are APC or we are PDP or we are Labour Party or any other party. It should be that you're there as president to serve the entirety of Nigerian citizens in the country. So I think that the way we are going, it's more like, okay, we'll be favoring those in the APC more than we'll be favoring, you know, those in PDP and even in other political parties. But I think I would say that at this point, we've continued to say that governance has started. And it's going to be right now and all of that. So it's going to be a big task for him to be able. He has said that one of the major things he's going to do is to see how he can reunite, you know, Nigerians along party lines, along ethnic lines and religious lines and all of that. So it's going to be a very serious task for him ahead. Let's not forget, being the fact that there's been so much said about the, you know, the elections and his initial or final coming up as the president-elect, a lot of Nigerians will be watching. A lot of critics will be on his neck to make sure that he's checked and all of that. But again, government should at some point try to remove themselves from the mix of all that is happening. If you say that there was no rigging of any sort, I think that would not be true, given the fact that Nigerians follow the process through and you know, they put it and all of that. So there was a situation where Nigerians followed through the process. We saw Nigerians stand and wait till their votes were counted. We saw Nigerians demand that these results of the elections were uploaded to the IREB and all of that. We saw Nigerians even scream out, take pictures, take videos. So when government comes out to say that rigging was a sham, it was a scam, we saw also, you know, international organizations, monitoring organizations, you know, give their 10% or there are 2 kobo sent to all the election procedures that happened. So is it that government is trying to, you know, push all of that aside and say that nothing of such happened? It won't be fair on the part of government that are handling this post-election issues. Go ahead and do their jobs.
And for the good and sanity of the country, we hope that there is no kind of infringement of space. Now, what I mean by that, let's be sure that the judiciary can do what they need to do by Nigerians.
Exactly.
You know, by the evidence brought before them in the law courts. Let's, you know, the federal government, whoever the minders are, the representatives who are giving all this back-to-back statements every day to defend the fact that, you know, who INEC declared as president-elect is the correct, you know, winner of the election. They should just stand apart from that. The country has taken it, but let the federal government be careful with their language and, you know, state the vanguard. And we are looking at inflation, high interest rates drive the stock market to lose at 1.01 trillion naira in April alone. And we see that we lost in the market with over 70%, 100% margin in the market, and we lost 70% gains in Q1 alone. So everything track. I know that the redesign policy is part of the things that has really affected the country in this first quarter of the year, and several other indices, but this is bad for our economic numbers.
Yeah, definitely. I think it also behoves on the Central Bank of Nigeria now to see how those kinds of issues can be reverted. You know, when some of these issues are being linked to the new Naira policy, it becomes
the
a
lack
major
of forex
concern.
also for
Lack of forex and all of that, it becomes a major concern. Why are we not finding lasting solutions to the economic crunch that we have faced for the longest of time? Why are we not coming out of it and all of that? We know that we have gone through a series of it is not inflation now, but the economy has, you know, relapsed a whole lot. Why are we not being strategic in terms of our policies, the kinds of policies that we bring up? We're also thinking that the new Naira policy was one that will boost the economy again, but rather than boost it, it plunged it the more, you know, before we actually begin to implement those policies. But many more stories on the front pages of our dailies this morning. Of course, the issue of central banks saying that they are supplying new Naira notes to banks. We also hope that we get to begin to see those new Naira notes in circulation. Is one thing to say that we have, you know, introduced or put more Naira notes into circulation. Is yet another thing for Nigerians to be able to see the Naira notes and get to have them and make use of them as well. And then of course, NLC and CSOs are pleading with the judiciary to save Nigeria's democracy. I think this, at this point, Nigerians are more like our last hope now in saving the democracy of the country is in the hands of you know, a judiciary system at this point in time. So, but again, the question will be asked, when a lot of hope gives at the end of the day. I know that it's going to be a very tasking one, more like a Herculean task for the judiciary or the judicial system. But again, if, for example, because all of this is targeted towards the 2023 elections, if, for example, APC is saying that, look, we won this election, or PDP is saying we won the election, or Labour Party is saying that we won the election, then there should be very cogent, you know, reasons or very practical evidences to prove beyond reasonable doubt. I think that some people have also said, look, the procedures of all the proceedings, you know, should also be very transparent. It should be open for Nigerians to see and follow through, so that we have a situation where the judiciary at the end of the day comes up to say, this is our judgment, and all Nigerians, you know, stand by it and say, yes, the judiciary have actually saved the.
Let's see how that goes. Oftentimes cameras are not necessarily allowed in courtrooms, but let's see how this goes. We just need to do this in the best interest of Nigeria as a country, and let's preserve what is ours. But that you know, line of thought and question you raise, at the end of the day, also Nigerians must make sure that we are ready to accept whatever the judiciary gives us as judgment, and at that point just move forward. at the end of the day, if mandates are, if the quarters that say their mandates have been stolen are, any of them now, because PDP is saying day one, APC is still upheld as the winners of the election, I feel like we should all just accept it going forward and let's work towards the country for the next 4 years. And if in reality, Nigerians did not necessarily want, a particular person in government, after the next 4 years of them being in power, make sure that what they experience, because a lot of things unsettled INEC and unsettled the federal government with how Nigerians went about the elections. So we are saying if the result from the judicial proceedings does not land either way, because I mean APC wants it to be in their favor, Labour Party wants it to be in their favor, PDP wants it to be in their favor. At the end, the judgment is only going to favor one person. The end stands unaccepted by the country. We have the next chance at the next polls to tell, INEC and the federal government, we told you that the last time this is not what we wanted, So there is more room for us to work, but the collective peace of our country is very important.
It's very important.
Yes.
And even as we look forward to the next 28 days, that is going to usher in, I think, the 16th democratically elected government, president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Let's make sure that we put our hands all on the deck right now to make sure that the country is as peaceful and productive as possible. At this point, we take a breather, and when we come back, of course, we'll be looking at the challenging situation Nigerian workers are facing, just like we have it on our national dailies this morning as part of the big stories there. We'll be having Jido Ojo, who is the Executive Director, OJA Development Consult, and an challenges so far. Just stay with us. Don't move a muscle. still rise and shine, and we've had a lot of very interesting conversations so far on the show this morning. But let's look at our focus conversation, and that's talking about Nigerian workers. Like the papers have said, this conversation is Jide Ojo, who is the Executive Director, OJA Development Consult, author, columnist with the Punch newspaper, and of course, host of Development Focus with Jide Ojo on ITV and a public affairs analyst. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Ojo.
Good morning, my beautiful sister. Happy new month.
We wish you same as well.
How is you today?
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic.
Weather is bright, very bright here in Abuja.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Good to have you on the show. Happy Workers' Day. I think that's a good place to start. Happy Workers' Day.
Exactly.
How do you feel having given over 30 years into the workforce in Nigeria? How do you feel being a veteran in this system, celebrating another May Day?
Before you are a worker, you are a living being, and you have opportunity to earn a living. That's why you are a worker. If you do not have work, you are not a worker. There are people who went to school at first, second degree, some with PhD that are still looking for work. So the situation is such that it's a misgrill. It's a misgrill for me because 2 days public holiday for Salah. The previous week, we took 2 days public holiday for Easter, Good Friday and Easter Monday. So in less than 1 month, we have taken 5 days off work. And that's outside of weekends, Saturday, Sundays. So you ask yourself, what's our level of productivity as a country? During the COVID-19, workers who are like 12, grade level 12 and below were asked to stay off work for over 1 year. And yet, in the course of that period, they were paid. So the point I'm making is that the productivity level of Nigerian workers are falling. And when you also look at the environment, work environment, both in private and public sector, is very appalling. I tend to disagree to the extent that when you look at the private sector, it's like it's not regulated. You have the Indians, the Koreans, the Lebanese, engaging in mass casualization. Today, many people you see in the banking hall are casual workers. The tellers, what banks now do is to outsource the contract of those who are the workers in the bank. So if you look at, if you have 20 workers in a bank, only 5 may be 5 permanent staff. Others are casual staff. All because this, and we tolerate this thing. We have Ministry of Labor, both at the federal and state level. We have the labor unions. Many a time they go on picketing. But how effective has been picketing? We have the national, just last year, ASU went on strike for 8 months. And ASU wants to get paid for the 8 months of not working. So it's a complex issue. The private sector, there are many media houses, media station broadcast, and newspaper stations that will not pay workers in 6 months, in 10 months, in 12 months, asking workers to use their ID cards as their means of income. So when you look at, and the private sector, the micro, small, and medium enterprises is the fulcrum of every economy. Because when you look at how many workers do government employ, I will tell you for free, all federal government has taken care of its own workers now. That's why COVID-19, federal government did not sack any worker. And now, just this last month, federal government has started the implementation of 40% increase in the allowances of federal workers. I say it's complex. I give kudos to the federal government. Under the Buhari administration, You have the salaries increased from 18,000 to 30,000. You have the allowances increased. We just spoke about that. The salaries of teachers was increased. The salaries of police was increased. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
That is federal government. But come to the states, only very few states are paying the 30,000 minimum wage. Very, very disheartening, because as it is said, labor creates wealth. But even when they create this wealth, are they partaker of the wealth?
Okay, so
Are they
I
partaker?
think Mr. Joe, it brings me back to the major story on the Punch newspaper this morning, trying to review the scorecard of the 8 years that government has increased salaries from 18,000 naira back then to 30,000 naira, and of course the 40% arrears increase just done recently as well. But workers are still lamenting hardship, and also scored Buhari, who is the president, and of course governors low on welfare. And quite alarming also to realize this morning, Mr. Joe, is that pensioners still earn 500 naira and 700 naira monthly. And they're putting this side by side by the harsh economic realities on ground.
Well, it's not as if I've tried to calibrate. In spite of whatever you may say about the federal government of Nigeria, it's still better than the states. I mean, many of you would prefer to work for federal government than to work for state government. Maybe in many states, I don't know whether Akwa Ibom civil service is best paid. I know Lagos just increased. This federal government, no matter what you want to say, when Buhari came, the first thing that he encountered was lack of payment of salaries, and the state governors met him about June 2015 to seek what? Bailout, to ask for bailout funds. And on 2 or 3 occasions, he advanced them these bailout funds. That was when the economy was in doldrum, when the price of crude oil, which is our mainstay, the mainstay of our economy, was about $30. Unfortunately, 8 years down the line, it's still the same story of empty treasury. Because by the 29th of this May, watch out, my sisters, by first week of June, it will be stories of I met empty treasury, I met huge debt portfolio, and all of that. So the bottom line is that corruption has played a very key role in where we have found ourselves. Yes, the global economy is not doing well. And if you watch foreign media, you'll have seen that in France, in UK, in US, workers are going on strike. Even in universities in UK, I've seen universities lecturers in UK going on strike. So truck drivers are going on strike, workers, medical workers are going on strike. So it's not a Nigerian phenomenon, But what is peculiar about Nigeria is that even for organized private sectors, and quite unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword. If you don't take care of your workers, they will become corrupt. Because situations where you fail to pay the 30,000 minimum wage, meetings that you could have sent somebody to come by commercial flight to attend, or even you, what's wrong in a governor being on commercial flight? But our governors are living large. Look at the pension they have given themselves in many states. There was a time in about 27 states, they have retirement benefits for their governors in multi-billion. The Savara case that broke out two years ago was very, very amusing, where the former governor was asking for 100 million naira monthly pension that the state government was owing him. 100 million in a state that is the poverty capital of Nigeria, and a governor is taking home as much as 100 million as pension monthly.
Monthly, times
That
4,
is how we
please.
got our priorities wrong. And that is what has incentivized corruption. So
All right, sir.
these workers themselves have found a way of taking care of their own needs by, revenue leakages and all of that.
Exactly.
So that's the very unfortunate scenario that is playing out across.
Well, our practices, our workers, as workers rather, in the Nigerian, mainstream workforce. I was asking earlier in our conversation with Janice this morning, can we put our workers on a competitive stage with other, practitioners in our different fields on the global stage, and we will do well? I know we always have the story of, oh, Nigerians in diaspora are doing excellently, but let us look at Nigerians in Nigeria, in our workforce, in competition with workers in other climes. How well would you say we are doing in terms of productivity? Because now this is a story I was telling earlier. When we talk about people working in the federal or state secretariat, we say, oh, those people, they just go to work in the morning, sign in their attendance sheets, sit down and wait for 2 p.m. to take their bags and go. How productive are they at work? So let's talk about productivity in the
we are poorly paid, we are not paid commensurate salaries and remunerations. But what is their productivity level? It's very appalling. It's very, very appalling. And I will also say it's not entirely the fault of the workers. Situations where you engage people and you don't provide them office furniture, they don't have working tools, what do you want them to work with? See about 5 workers sharing one small office, which is not conducive. So it's a catch-22. We blame workers for not being productive, but the answer is, were they also incentivized to be productive? If all my life I've been privileged to work in the private sector, in the non-governmental sector, I tell you, I started using computer over 15 years ago, laptops, because my bosses will send me assignments not by calling me to their offices, but through Outlook. We call it Outlook Express. It's an email, intra-office email. You just see it drop in your mailbox, and you have been assigned a responsibility. The boss doesn't have to shout at you to say, oh, go and do this, and this. We don't have file, we don't have physical, everything is done virtually in my office. And I have a desktop, I have a laptop. But in the public sector and some other private sector, you have, like I said earlier, on 4, 5, 6, even in universities, you'll be surprised that some doctors are sharing offices. How do they want to do research? How productive can you be when you cannot lock yourself in your office to read and do your research work because your colleague is attending to students, or somebody is coming to visit that they portion people to? Stationery, common stationaries you don't have. Data, no internet facility. So even where some offices have computerized, when you don't have internet, people go to study secretarial studies. If you do that today, you are out of employment already. And what is the level of computer literacy of public servants? Maybe 20%. Because I know some people in a government agency where the agents learn how to use computer. So the point is, productivity should be situated in what is the office providing, vis-a-vis what are the set targets even for the workers. It's in this country we have in the lead up to the election, someone where are their offices? What are the things? And they draw salaries every month. So situations where people don't have offices, they don't have working tools, they don't have regular salaries, they are stuck on promotion. Some people have been on this.
Now, I think our time is running out. We have barely 3 minutes to wrap up this conversation. From productivity now, you cannot leave redundancy out of all this conversation. So very quickly, let's address the issue of redundancy.
The issue of redundancy, that is why some governors like Governor El-Rufai tried to streamline the workforce in Kaduna State. That many of the workers are not productive and they are not employable. Some do not even have the requisite qualifications, but they were absorbed for political considerations. So they are redundant, they are not productive, and ordinarily should be asked to leave the system. But the workers' union will say, no, you cannot sack. How will you? And why don't? The point is, okay, how will you not have redundancy? My sisters, a ministry has 3 vehicles, but has 20 drivers. So the issue is a very disheartening thing that many employments are done on political considerations, not on competence, not on productivity, and even there are no set goals. The workers are just asked to go and resume. Even lecturers in university, you see some of future leaders of this country.
All right.
So we need to do a lot of reforms, civil service reforms, to ensure that we are in compliance with modern day administration that is ICT driven. You get, you can, even without sacking workers, those workers that we say are redundant can be trained to fit into other areas in the organization so that they are not made to lose their means of livelihood. But in Nigeria, we need to do less with political consideration.
All right.
And there are even issues of employment racketeering. Employment racketeering, sex for employment, and all of those shenanigans that play out, both in private and public sector. But it's a very complicated and we need reforms across board.
All right. Thank you so much, Jide Ojo, Executive Director, OJA Development Consult, and of course, the Public Affairs Analyst. Thank you so much for your, all issues surrounding the employment and productivity of the Nigerian labor force. But we want to say a big thank you to you, Jide Ojo, for being with us this morning.
Always a pleasure. Enjoy your week.
All right.
Happy Workers' Day.
All right, same to you. Oh, great conversation.
Yeah,
I like
great.
where he landed. Reforms is what we need going forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the much we can actually take on Rise and Shine this morning. A bright way to have started our week with you. And happy Workers' Day. I hope that you become a productive person on your end. My name is Uyai Anyek, and thanks for watching.
Isaac. See you again tomorrow.